Good morning. This is the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion briefing for this Monday, January 11th. Taking a look at precipitation over the past 7 days in typical El Nino fashion, quite heavy across California and across the southwest into southern portions of Utah and Nevada. You can see how that precipitation does taper off as you head further northwards through the Great Basin and up into Idaho. On the right-hand side, you see percent of normal, definitely heavy, anywhere from 200 to 400% of normal across southern portions of the Great Basin, but very quickly dropping off to below normal across northern Utah, northern Nevada, and especially drier across parts of Idaho into far western Wyoming. Taking a look at the upper level maps with satellite imagery superimposed, you can see that we actually have a narrow ridge of high pressure now building across the Great Basin, sandwiched in between a big low pressure trough over Hudson's Bay and another in a series of low pressure troughs approaching the Pacific Northwest. These systems that are further offshore will eventually buckle this high pressure, but in the meantime, high pressure ridge, meaning poor dispersion, will be in control across the region. So taking a look at our dispersion this afternoon, the ventilation index, which combines both vertical transport with mixing heights and horizontal with transport winds. You can see that this purple area encompasses a good portion of Nevada as well as parts of Utah. Very poor dispersion in these areas. Only areas that could be marginal are the southern third of Nevada as well as far northern Arizona and parts of Utah, but overall not a good dispersion day. If we look at these parts broken down, you can see that on the left, transport winds fairly light in that gray shade across most areas, a little bit better across parts of Idaho and across southern third of Nevada and up through the Wasatch. It will be some decent transport flow in the afternoon. But on the right-hand side, with that high pressure locking in, you can see that overall vertical mixing will be very poor. The best will be across maybe far eastern areas and far southern areas. Now, if we take a look at Tuesday afternoon, on the left, high pressure ridge building on in, dry wedge of air building in from the south, so some cloud cover across the far north. On the right-hand side, you can see overall dispersion remains fairly poor again across most of the region. Breaking it down, again, on the transport flow side of things, light winds across most of Nevada and Utah. Again, a bit better transport flow coming out of the west and west-northwest across parts of the Snake River Valley and some of the higher terrain in Idaho. So that could help things there as well as across parts of the higher terrain of western Wyoming. But on the right-hand side, vertical mixing very poor due to that high pressure and the snow cover on the ground as well. Let's take a look a bit further down. We'll take a peek at Wednesday afternoon. And you can see that ridge kind of breaks down. Get a little weak trough of low pressure. Also some cloud cover given by those green shade areas. And unfortunately, even though we have low pressure, which typically brings better dispersion, the clouds will blot out any sunlight that could cause mixing. So on the right-hand side, you see those purple colors stay locked in. So overall, still fairly poor dispersion. On the transport wind side that day, you can see that the winds start picking up, especially in the lee side of the Sierra and across Nevada. Still fairly light across Utah. Still moderate to locally gusty winds up in Idaho. And on the right-hand side, vertical mixing. As we go up into Idaho, it actually improves a little bit. So up in parts of Idaho, there could be some good ventilation windows starting to develop, but across Utah and at least the eastern half of Nevada, still fairly poor overall dispersion across. Of course, the further west you go, the better it will get. Now, confining our look here in Utah to the clearing index produced by the National Weather Service in Salt Lake City, you can see that the trend from Monday afternoon, Tuesday, and Wednesday will be towards fairly poor dispersion overall. Still some decent dispersion in the Uintas this afternoon. That'll be decreasing. But by Wednesday afternoon, you see the shade of blue on the left-hand side. Western areas of Utah may start seeing some slightly better dispersion conditions by midweek with that weak trough of low pressure. Let's take a look down the next couple of days and see what precipitation is expected. And you can see the next storm rolls into the Pacific Northwest and into the northern half of California with heavy amounts of precipitation, 2-3 inches of rainfall in some areas. Across the Great Basin, though, these amounts in the light shade of green, fairly light, just a hundredth to a tenth of an inch, maybe up to a quarter of an inch in parts of the northern Wasatch into some of the higher terrain of Wyoming and southern Idaho. And also near McCall as well. So in Idaho, Wyoming, far northern Utah, maybe 2 to 4 inches of additional snowfall, flurries elsewhere. Now if we take a bit further look down as we go through Thursday afternoon, you can see that we start seeing more moisture moving in across most of the Great Basin on northwest flow. And on the right-hand side, you see those dispersion conditions actually improving. This is the ventilation index, combines, again, both transport winds and mixing heights. Instead of seeing purples over the Great Basin, we're seeing more in the reds, yellows, and even some whites. That indicates overall better dispersion. So that's for Thursday afternoon. Let's take a look for Friday. And you can see Friday as well. Dispersion, a little bit of purple showing up here near Reno. Larger area of red through here, but still overall better towards the end of the week than it will be during the early part of the week. Now, as we go into Saturday, as the cloud cover increases, and we actually get a little bit of high pressure ridge building back in across the Great Basin into the northern Rockies, you can see that dispersion given by this expanded purple area starts to get a little bit worse. And that is for Saturday. As we get into Sunday, again, that high pressure ridge kind of still hangs through here. Cloud cover across the western portion of the Great Basin, some clear skies and drier air to the east. And overall, you can still see kind of a mix of some poor dispersion areas in the purple, only moderate in the red, but again, not as good as it might have been Thursday into Friday. Precipitation totals as we go down towards the end of the week into the early part of the weekend. Again, the storm system kind of stalls out across the California coast with several inches of rain possible as well into Oregon. As for the Great Basin, the wettest areas will be across the higher terrain of central Nevada, where they could see near a half inch of precipitation, so maybe 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, and about a half inch up here across parts of southeastern Idaho. Just a hundredth to maybe a quarter of an inch across Utah. Again, most of this will be in the form of snow, of perhaps 1 to 3 inches at most. Looking at the 8 to 14 day outlook, which takes us into next week. Again, temperature-wise, definitely not looking for any Arctic air coming in. Actually, a little warmer than normal across the Great Basin. But on the precipitation side, again, a little wetter than normal. This is, again, largely influenced by El Nino, but we'll see some light to moderate systems coming through just about every other day, especially across Nevada and into parts of western Utah. This concludes our smoke briefing. Have a great day. The next smoke briefing will be Wednesday, January 13th.